The details were different every time. Different name, different city, maybe a different decade of your life. Someone new who made you think. This time, it's gonna be different. And for a while, sometimes weeks, sometimes months, it was. Until it wasn't. Until the same slow withdrawal started. The same gradual distance that was hard to name. Because nothing dramatic happened. The same ending that wasn't really an ending. Just a fade, a cooling, a silence that eventually became impossible to explain away. And at some point, usually after the third or fourth time, something clicked. The person sitting across from you was someone new. The feeling of slowly watching them become unavailable was not. That recognition, quiet, unwelcome, arriving without drama, is what brought most people to a video like this one. Not the heartbreak, the pattern. What this video is going to give you is the explanation one layer deeper than anything you've probably already heard. Not, you choose what feels familiar. You've heard that, and it hasn't moved anything. The actual mechanism, the specific thing your nervous system learned, when it learned it, and why it keeps running that program without asking for your permission first. 3 things are going to happen here. The pattern is going to be named with enough precision that you finally have real language for what you've been living. The mechanism underneath it is going to be explained not as a character flaw, but as a learned response that made complete sense given what taught it. And the distinction that actually matters between what you were taught about love and who you are is going to be given to you as something you can hold. Here is the thing about the pattern that makes it so hard to catch in real time. It never feels like repetition while it's happening, because the person is genuinely different. Different laugh, different history, different way of showing up in the first weeks. And you're not naive. You've reflected on your previous relationships. You know what went wrong. You've done at least some version of the work. So when this new person appears and feels different, you have real reasons to believe it is different. The early stages feel lighter, more possible. There is something about this one that seems to have more room in it. And underneath that lightness, if you're being precise about it, there is something else. A particular kind of aliveness. A specific quality of attention, yours toward them, theirs toward you, that has an edge to it. Not quite anxiety, not quite excitement. Something that sits right at the border of both. Most people, when they feel that, read it as chemistry. And in one sense, they're right. Something is activating. What almost nobody explains is what is activating and why, and what that specific activation has been quietly selecting for across every relationship they've had since the first one that taught them what love feels like. Because here is what the pattern is not. It is not a preference for dramatic people. It is not self-sabotage in any meaningful sense of the word. It is not evidence of low standards or poor judgment or a need for chaos. Those explanations land like accusations, and they're not accurate enough to be useful. What the pattern actually is, and this is the part that changes things when you genuinely understand it, is a nervous system running a very old program. One that was written before you had the language to question it. One that is still running right now, below the level of conscious choice. And the reason it keeps producing the same result with different people is that it was never selecting for the person. It was selecting for a feeling. Every nervous system learns what love feels like from its earliest experiences of it. Not in a theoretical way. In a bodily way. Before you had words for it, your nervous system was mapping. When I am close to someone I need, what does that feel like? And whatever the honest answer was, in your specific household, with your specific early caregivers, that answer became the template. Not a template for what kind of person love comes from. A template for what emotional activation love feels like. That is a different thing. And it is the distinction that explains everything. If the love you first experienced arrived alongside uncertainty, alongside someone who is sometimes there and sometimes not, sometimes warm and sometimes distant, then your nervous system did not learn that uncertainty is painful and should be avoided. It learned that uncertainty is part of what love feels like. It encoded the whole package. So when you're with someone who creates that specific edge, that particular combination of connection and not quite certainty, your nervous system does not raise an alarm. It recognizes something. It says, this is familiar. This is what love has always felt like in the body. And that recognition reads, from the inside, as chemistry, as depth, as the feeling that this one is real in a way the others weren't, Research on emotional conditioning shows consistently that the associations we form earliest are the most durable, not because we chose them or endorsed them, but because they were written into the nervous system during a period when the nervous system was doing nothing but learning what the world is. What this means, practically, is something important. You are not choosing the same person. You are choosing the same emotional signature. That phrase is worth sitting with for a moment. An emotional signature is the specific pattern of activation your body has learned to read as love. It is not a type. It is not a preference. It is a felt sense, a particular quality of aliveness in the presence of a particular kind of dynamic that your nervous system moves toward the way a hand moves toward warmth. Not because you decided to, because you were taught to. And the people who create that signature, who carry that specific combination of connection and uncertainty, warmth and withdrawal, are the ones who will keep feeling, in the early stages, like the real thing. Because for your nervous system, they are the real thing. They match the map. The problem is not that the map is wrong about the feeling. The problem is that the map was drawn a long time ago, by experiences that didn't have your adult well-being in mind. And it has been guiding your choices ever since. Below the level of intention, below the level of insight, below the reach of the versions of understanding you've already tried. Here is the part that almost nobody says out loud about this. And it is the part that matters most, especially if you've been sitting with this for a while. You can know everything that was just described. You can understand the emotional signature concept completely. You can recognize it in your history, name it with precision, trace it back to where it started. And the next time someone walks into your life and creates that specific activation, that edge, that aliveness, that particular quality of almost but not quite certain, your nervous system will not wait for your analysis to finish. It will have already decided. Before your brain catches up, the interest will be there. The attention will have shifted. The particular quality of hope will have arrived. And some part of you will be watching this happen and thinking, I know exactly what this is. And knowing it, in that moment, will not be enough to stop it. This is the part where most people conclude that something is fundamentally wrong with them, that the pattern is not something they have. It is something they are. That understanding hasn't changed anything, which means they are beyond the reach of understanding. That conclusion is wrong. And it is wrong in a specific structural way. The mechanism running the pattern is not located in the part of your brain that processes insight. It lives deeper, in the structures that were shaped earliest, in the parts that respond to emotional cues before conscious thought has a chance to form. Telling that part of the brain what you know intellectually is like trying to reason with a fire alarm. The alarm is not interested in your analysis. It is doing its job, the job it was trained to do. This is not a failure of insight. It is not evidence that you haven't done enough work. It is evidence of something specific and structurally neutral. The mechanism that runs the pattern is not the same mechanism that reads self-help articles. They are different systems, and the reason prior understanding hasn't produced automatic change is not that you are beyond changing. It is that understanding, alone, is not what updates the nervous system. What updates the nervous system is experience. Specifically, repeated experience of a different emotional signature. Moments where someone is present without the withdrawal, where consistency doesn't register as boring but slowly, incrementally, begins to register as safe, where intimacy doesn't trigger the familiar alarm because the familiar alarm doesn't recognize anything to be alarmed by. That accumulation is slow. It does not happen through deciding. It happens through exposure to people, to dynamics, to moments that don't confirm the old map often enough that the nervous system begins, cautiously, to draw a new one. What was learned can be unlearned, not by force, not by willpower, not by being smarter about your choices next time, by the slow accumulation of evidence that the old map is not the only possible map. That is what the pattern can change actually means, at the level where change has to happen to be real. If this opens something, if what this video named is something you want to go further with, there is a resource in the description built for exactly the next step. It's called the Love History Audit, and it's a structured workbook that takes what this video explained and makes it personal. 8 exercises across 4 sessions designed to help you map your own relationship history, extract your specific emotional signature, and understand the pattern at the level of your own life. Not as a concept, but as a real sequence of real moments. The video gave you the mechanism. The workbook gives you your specific version of it. The link is in the description and in the pinned comment. So what is actually different now that you have this? You probably already know the logical answer to that question is not everything immediately. The emotional signature doesn't stop feeling like chemistry because you've named it. The pull doesn't vanish because you've understood its origin. And that is not a failure of this framework. It is an honest acknowledgement of how the nervous system actually works. What changes is something smaller and something real. The next time you feel that specific activation, that edge, that aliveness, that particular quality of almost but not quite certain, you will have a name for what is happening. Not a judgment, not a command to stop, not a rule to follow. A name. This is the emotional signature I was taught to read as love. That naming creates something that did not exist before. A gap, a fraction of a second, maybe more with time, between the activation and the automatic response. Between the feeling and the following of it. That gap is not enough time to fix anything. It is enough time to notice that something is happening and that you are the one noticing it. Which means, in that moment, you are not only the nervous system, you are also the person watching the nervous system. And that distinction, small as it sounds, is where every real change in this territory actually begins. There is also something worth saying about the people who don't create that signature. The available ones. The consistent ones. The people who show up without the withdrawal. If you've spent time around them and felt, honestly, less activated, less interested, less certain it was real, that response makes complete sense. They don't match the map, which means the nervous system doesn't recognize them yet as the thing it was looking for. This is not evidence that you're incapable of wanting healthy love. It is evidence that your nervous system has not yet learned to read a different emotional signature as love. That is a different diagnosis. And it points to a different solution. Not better choices, but a different kind of accumulated experience. The goal is not to stop feeling drawn to intensity. The goal is to expand what the nervous system reads as real, to slowly, through experience, teach it that presence without the edge is not absence of depth. That consistency is not the same as boredom. That the absence of anxiety is not the absence of love. It is, it turns out, what love feels like when it is actually safe. That is not a lesson that lands from a video. It lands from living it, but it starts from understanding what you're actually looking for and why, which is what this video was built to give you. If what this opened is something you want to take further, if you want to map your own specific pattern rather than just understand the general mechanism, the link in the description and the pinned comment will take you to the next step. It's built for exactly where this video ends. What was the moment you first realized the person had changed, but the pattern hadn't? And what did that recognition feel like? I want to leave you with the distinction that matters most, the one this entire video has been building toward. When the pattern follows you, across different people, different cities, different years of your life, it is very easy to draw one conclusion from that the common denominator is you. That the pattern is not something you have been running, that it is something you fundamentally are. That conclusion feels logical, it feels like honesty. It feels like finally facing something real. It is also wrong, in a specific way that matters enormously. The pattern is not a character verdict. It is a learning record. It is the accumulated evidence of what your nervous system was taught, early and repeatedly, about what love feels like in the body. It was a brilliant adaptation to the emotional environment you were handed. It made complete sense given what taught it. And it has been running faithfully ever since. Not because something is broken in you, but because that is what learned responses do. They run until something teaches them something different. What you walked into this video believing or fearing was that the pattern is evidence of something permanent. What the evidence actually shows, when you look at it the way we just did, is that the pattern is the record of what you survived, what you were handed, what you adapted to, as intelligently as a nervous system can adapt, before you were old enough to choose your teachers. Those are two completely different things. One is a verdict, one is a history, and a history, unlike a verdict, can change. Not because you decide hard enough, not because you understand it more thoroughly, but because understanding what the pattern actually is, at this level, in this language, is what makes a different experience possible to recognize when it arrives. And that is where it starts, not in the breakthrough, in the clarity that makes the next moment slightly more available to you than the one before it.